Okay, I'm Rea Chiongson, Senior Legal Advisor for IDLO. And joining me today is Tanya Primiani, Senior Investment Policy Officer of Women, Business and Law Program at the World Bank Group. The program measures gender equality in law across 189 countries or economies and published its report in 2018 of March this year. We are here at IDLO's office in The Hague to talk about the role of law in women's economic rights. In many parts of the world, women and girls continue to be denied rights. Recent figures have shown that inadequate legal protection affect over 2.5 billion women. So, Tanya, welcome. Can you tell us what areas that Women, Business and Law has found legal restrictions on women's economic participation and the consequences of those restrictions?
Great. Well, thanks so much for having me, Rea. It's a pleasure to be here. And to answer your question, our recent report that came out in March, like you mentioned, found that 104 economies still restrict the types of jobs that women can do worldwide. So this really has the impact of really reducing the number of jobs that 2.7 billion women worldwide have access to. And this can be in the form of restrictions on the type of work that they can do, for example, working at night, on the types of industries that they're able to work in. So for example, we see restrictions in mining and energy, agriculture, manufacturing, all sorts of different areas where women have less ability to enter the job market than their counterparts as men. We also see in our report that a third of the economies that we looked at have some kind of discrimination or restriction on freedom of movement or capacity. And this is in the form of some kind of difference in terms of capacity to do certain tasks. For example, get an ID or get a passport in the same way as a man. Sometimes it's difficult or impossible for women to do such things. Open a bank account, sign a contract, start a company. So these are all things in which women have restrictions that men don't have. And our research shows that when we correlate our data with economic outcomes, the countries that tend to do better in legal equality also tends to be the countries that do better on, that have a higher female labor force participation rate, for example, or have a lower wage gap. And so we see that this has the potential for a tremendous impact on the economy.
Thank you very much, Tanya. I mean, the figures are quite dismal if you look at it, but at the same time, it offers great insight on where we should go next. For IDLO, we do have a policy brief on women, food, land, and law, and it also looks at women's economic rights. So we see it as crucial for women's empowerment and also for gender equality. And in this policy brief, we actually also highlighted inadequate and discriminatory laws as one of the major challenges, as well as implementation gaps of those laws. And one of the things that we recommended, obviously, is law reform and legal and policy coherence as we move forward, to look at not only land laws or food policies, but to look at other areas of laws that are critical to move women forward. So on this note, I know that Women, Business and Law report also captures legal reforms towards gender equality. So did any legal reforms happen in the areas of women's economic rights, and where are economies headed in terms of promoting those rights?
Yeah, so over the past 2 years, which is when we measured last time, we saw a real improvement in how economies are doing. So 65 economies enacted 87 reforms overall. And so that shows that the needle is moving. It's not moving fast enough, but it's moving in the right direction. Overall, countries tend to move slowest in the area that you mentioned earlier, for example, on using property, unfortunately. That's an area where we've seen very little movement over the past couple of years. Only one country reformed in that area. On the area of labor law, and for us we call that topic getting a job, we've seen the most change so far. Countries have added maternity leave, paternity leave, extended the length of those leave, increased the rights to job. A lot of countries have actually removed restrictions to different jobs. Some of them have reduced them, some of them have removed them altogether. We see this as tremendously positive as well.
Great. I think one of the things that was brought out in our conversation was the interrelatedness of a lot of these rights. So when we're talking about economic rights, we talk about not simply one area of economic rights, but a group of economic rights that contribute to women's economic empowerment. And at the same time, at IDLO, we also believe that to enable gender equality, we need economic rights, but we also need education, access to justice, political participation, hand in hand. At IDLO, we believe that SDG 5 on gender equality and women's empowerment and SDG 16, which is on rule of law and justice, are interrelated. And they're not just goals in themselves, but they're also enabler of other goals that will push forward the 2030 Agenda for Development. Can you also draw the link between the Women, Business and Law report and the 2030 Agenda?
Yes, thanks for bringing that up. Actually, the World Bank is involved in a number of different initiatives at the SDG level, obviously, but at Women, Business and the Law, we're one of the co-custodian agencies of Indicator 511, which is the one that measures whether or not the legal framework is in place to promote, enforce, and monitor legal equality worldwide. And alongside the OECD and UN Women, we're basically tasked with monitoring that indicator and producing the data for it. So we've been working hand in hand with our colleagues, but using a lot of the Women, Business and the Law data to provide the data for that indicator at the SDG level.
Great. We'd like to thank you, Tanya, for joining us, and of course the Women, Business and Law program of the World Bank for giving us all this new information, and we look forward to more conversations on women's economic empowerment.
Great, thank you so much.